Welcome to Disrupt Your Data, the data leadership podcast for business leaders. Stop talking about it. Start having an impact with data. That's the mantra we have. Whether you're an executive, leading a department, or a functional team, benefit from best practices from overperforming companies and avoid stepping into classic pitfalls. This podcast is targeted at business leaders who want to grow faster and create real impact with data, analytics, and AI. I am Chris Lubash, and today we're going to talk about data-driven brand marketing or performance branding. It's almost weird. This topic should be so essential, looking at all the millions that companies spend on directly promoting their brand, but it's nowhere near as prominent as measuring the effects of your transactional or performance-oriented marketing initiatives. Why is that? Does it really make sense? Or do companies just not know how to do it? My next guest is a strong supporter for starting a good branding early on and measuring the effects that it has on your business.
For me, brand marketing is that important because it's some sort of an accelerator. If we manage to have a brand, we can increase our revenue by 20%, which means, or 30% sometimes, which means we could use that money, that margin, to actually invest into performance marketing channels. It's all about interpreting the data in the right way, because in the end, it's a play that comes together. It's like two wheels that are gripping into each other.
Once you do understand the interplay between branding and other marketing activities, it will not only allow you to much better understand how to optimize your marketing budget allocation, but it will also give you more valuable insights about your customers and their journeys with your brand. My next guest is a serial entrepreneur, African wildlife supporter, and a guy you just want to hang out with. He founded and exited a high-selling business in a super saturated market, namely mobile phones and contracts. And I can already spoil, data-driven brand marketing did play a role in this success. His next big thing is an advertising platform for trucks, which is quite a different story. I'm happy to have him on the podcast today. Please welcome Robert Ermich.
Hi, Christian. Good to see you.
Hey, Robbie. How are you doing?
Good. Actually, very good. Excited for the topics that we're going to speak about.
Cool. Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today, and I'm also happy to just catch up again with you. So without big preparation, I think let's dive right in and see where we will end up with. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Cool, great.
Happy to.
Hey, Robert, you're an entrepreneur, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. But you know, being an entrepreneur is it's very difficult at times because you never know what's going to happen that a day. You wake up, and it could be the best day for weeks. It could be the worst day for weeks. You never really know. So what do you do to counter that, and how do you start your day to get it productive?
It's a good question, actually. Well, to be fair, I don't really have that many routines in the morning. I do love to take a long shower in the morning to get my brain started a little bit, and I come up with crazy and stupid ideas sometimes in the morning. My employees at Dine Handy and my team members got to know that quite a lot, because they knew if I was 10 minutes late into the office, they were like, oh no, he had another idea. So that's kind of my thing in the morning. But apart from that, once I'm in the office, I'm just checking my emails, see what was left in the days before. And then a big part actually is checking the news, boulevard news and serious news, because a big part of marketing, and especially brand marketing, is, out of my opinion, to be up to date with current topics and to use them either for funny correlations or for serious stuff that you might want to avoid to post. And yeah, those are the things that I'm doing in the morning.
Okay. Sounds like to me pretty classic morning routine. Nothing too fancy, I would say. But it's fine. I know that some of your ideas are really fancy, so let's take a look at them then. Hey, do you remember when we first met?
It's got to be a while. It makes you realize that we're getting older. I think it must have been in 2008. Late 2008. It must have been at Rocket. Yeah,
exactly.
True.
Yeah, that was back in the day when we both worked for Rocket Internet, and which I think has been one of the most craziest time of my life, of my professional life, but also one of the most rewarding, because it was such a totally unique experience. And one of these unique experiences that I had with you is exactly how we met. Because when we started there, or when I started there, I think you have been already there. I basically came to Berlin and didn't know anybody. Okay, for the first 2 weeks, I crashed at a friend, and then I went back to the office and said, "Guys, I don't have an apartment or anything. I can't stay. I don't know where to go." And they said, "No problem. We will sort it out for you. We got you covered. Just go to this address in the evening, and for sure you can stay there." And you know what? It's kind of weird because I thought it was a hotel or something. But in the end, when I arrived, well, guess who was there? This guy. He opened the door. True. And I was like, oh my goodness, he doesn't look like he knows I'm coming. So I said, yeah, hi, I've been sent here to live here now because I work at Rocket and I was told you maybe, I don't know exactly. And he said, great, maybe, let's come in first and then sort it out. Yeah, and you remember that was kind of a weird moment when I crashed at your couch to just live there for a while. But it was a beginning of something very cool.
Not just even a night or two. It was like, I don't know, 6 weeks or something that you ended up staying at our place. Yeah, it was a great time back then. It was a very dynamic time, and it took a lot of things from it.
Great. Speaking of a dynamic time, why did you choose to become an entrepreneur?
I learned a lot during my time at Rocket, during our time at Rocket, and I made a lot of friends. You, of course, and a lot of other people that I'm still up to date, like 13, 14 years later, I'm in contact with. And I'm really glad, I'm really happy about this. And I think Rocket showed me that if you have the right team, you can do the right things at the right pace. And I think those were things compared to the internships or towards the prior experiences that I had, that was something that I really wanted to do, like to be able to choose my team, to be able to work in a team that I also after work want to have a couple of beer with. So this was one of the things, like first of all, seeing the opportunities that there were, realizing that there's a lot of opportunity out there to be used, and then like putting the right team together. I think those were the things that kept me in entrepreneurship and kept me coming back after my master's then.
Nice. I was going to ask you what's the best thing about being an entrepreneur, but I think you covered that very well. Hey,
yeah, it's surrounding yourself with the best and brightest guys and building up your own team.
Cool. Sounds great. And we'll dive into what you did at your companies in a few minutes. But one more question I had. If you could meet yourself back in the days in 2008, basically the older Robert and the back then little younger Robert, what advice would you give Robert for the career?
I would give little Robert the advice to probably be focused on your core product and not to spread your company too wide too soon. That would probably be the best advice to give, because that was a mistake that I think I repeated, and some of my friends also repeated from time to time, to not really focus on the core business, but to kind of stray away a little bit here and there, and to diversify too quickly instead of really focusing on getting your own product ahead enough.
Great. I think that's something we're all guilty of at times, right?
Yeah.
Hey, cool. Let's jump into our topic today. In our previous chat, we brainstormed a bit about the potential topic for today, and we came up with an idea that we thought fits very well for both sides of the table, and it's data-driven brand marketing. So it's all about the idea of, on the one side, why is brand marketing important? Which is kind of a question that probably people have answered 30, 40, 50, maybe even 100 years ago. But at the same time, the rules have changed quite a bit, right? Today, we hear people talking about performance marketing, and we can measure everything. And we all know that every click that we do on a website, for example, can potentially be tracked. And now the question is, data-driven brand marketing, is it something that maybe even fits together, right? That's something we want to explore today. And why is that topic so interesting to you? That's something I would really like to know.
Well, for me, it's a really interesting topic because in the beginning, I started out with Dein Handy. I did the same thing before. I worked in a Price24, which we sold to ProSieben 7 Ventures, and we worked in a saturated market in mobile phones and contract. So you had a lot of competition. You had a lot of price comparison pages that were out there already. You had a lot of big comparison pages that were out there, and you had the carriers. So you had to differentiate yourself in one way or the other. Differentiating in price was not really an option because, you had to offer good prices, but then you couldn't lower the prices too much because then your margin would just be too low. So for me, it was from the beginning that we needed to have a good brand and a strong brand to ensure that we can take a little higher price from the customer in order to then push our performance marketing.
Okay, cool. And what do you think is the business value or the business impact of doing so?
Well, the business impact was quite easy. We said, okay, if we manage to have a brand, we can increase our revenue by 20%, which means, or 30% sometimes, which means we could use that money, that margin, to actually invest into performance marketing channels to scale them faster or to scale them at a bigger level, which then again helped us to accelerate the company faster, which is why in the end it took us only 2 years to become market leader in that field back at the time, which was quite a strong effort.
And I mean, there's all sorts of studies when I read the news that say, okay, for brands like Adidas, for instance, the brand is super important. That's always the outcome. And I think that's kind of, it's not a big surprise. Let's say it like this. But I think it's getting very interesting when we talk about smaller companies. People have learned from companies from, for example, Zalando and Rocket Internet in the early days that outperformed everybody else by doing better performance marketing back in the days. Why do you think a brand adds additional value in a world where everything can be measured and brand marketing is not so easy to measure?
Well, for me, brand marketing is that important because it's some sort of an accelerator. It's like either you come from the way that you're doing a lot of performance marketing, and with that performance marketing, you increase your brand step by step. And if you have found a good channel on performance marketing, you can slowly build the brand up there. But if you're coming from the other side in an already saturated market, then it's kind of difficult to outperform everybody in just focusing on performance marketing. So adding a brand to that will increase your speed and will increase your opportunities to get ahead, because as I just said, like, it will support your margin and it will support your opportunity then to actually boost your performance marketing. So it's something that kind of goes hand in hand.
And that for you is even true, although brand marketing can be pretty expensive. So you on the one side, you spend a lot of money on brand marketing, and on the other side, you increase your margins. That what would you say?
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm saying, because as we've seen with Dein Handy, in the beginning, you start with 100% of the traffic on your web page is paid traffic. In the end, 50% of your traffic and maybe 50% of your conversions are brand conversions. And the faster you get there, that means like half of your conversions are actually non-paid, which allows you like pretty much to spend double on your performance campaigns. And that's why I think it's really important. And the other thing why I think it's really important is that especially nowadays, especially with visual channels, more and more in coming, like Instagram, TikTok, whatsoever, people are willing to pay a lot more if they perceive quality, if they perceive value, even if it's not a much different product. But if they have trust, and if they believe in that brand, then they're willing to pay a pretty big premium for that.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of people who say that building a brand is a long-term plan versus performance marketing, which tends to be like a short-term plan. And I think you've mentioned a lot of super interesting points here. So a brand can be loaded with values. What does the brand stand for? It can trigger emotions at customers or at consumers. And I think those are things that we tend to not see at performance marketing, which may or may not be possible depending on what you're doing, of course. But I think this is something that really makes brands stick out. Let's take a look at, for example, Apple, right? They release a new product, everybody wants to have it, whether it's the best product on the market or not. Or let's look at Amazon, who built themselves a great reputation of not only being customer-centric and also having great customer service, nice return policies, and so on, but also people tend to see Amazon as the best place to buy because it's always the cheapest or among the cheapest. And that's kind of totally not true anymore these days. But the brand still lives from that to some extent. And it's crazy to see what an effect that can have, right? after having all that said, that also means that it's equally important for a startup as well, right? Not only for larger, already established companies.
It is really important towards a startup or a smaller company, because those are the things that in the end, especially if you're in a competitive market, can help you to stick out. If there are few things that you can differentiate yourself from the competition, and it's maybe only price, but price is something that maybe the competition, if they have deep pockets, might do as well. And brand is something, if you are developing yourself towards something specific, that is not something that can be copied that easily, because it sort of is like a personal identifier for yourself. So those are things. Yeah.
And Robbie, do you think others spend too little time on that?
I do think that, and not necessarily on doing brand marketing, but having a good brand marketing strategy. I think those are the things that people think too few in, and they don't look deep enough into the data to support that. And that is something, I mean, when it comes down, you have to interpret your data, your marketing data. And if people are just looking towards a certain campaign and they're saying like, hey, this campaign is not paying off what we're putting into, but they're not seeing the cross references, and they're not seeing the assisted conversions and the brand effect on that, then they're missing out something like really, really big.
What do you think are the biggest challenges for companies out there to do better data-driven brand marketing?
Yeah, I think it really is an interpretation game. It really is a game to say like to either extrapolate the right data and to address your campaigns in the right direction. Like it probably is not going to make sense to make a national out-of-home marketing campaign when you have 50 other campaigns running at the same time, and when you have a sale anyway and lower your prices, because you're probably not going to see a big amount of change, and it's probably going to be difficult to read into that. However, if you're, for example, just like sticking to a certain region and trying to push a brand campaign in that, and you make a panel questionnaire before and after, and you look at your brand conversions in that area around that time, then it's probably going to get easier to see like, hey, okay, what do I have as an impact in there? And then you make another test and another test. And if you see more or less of the same things coming out, then you start to realize like, hey, okay, these brand campaigns do have an impact. Yeah, I think those are things that are they're really important for marketers to look at.
So you would say that the effects between brand marketing and performance marketing, and to mingle them out or separate them, let's say, that is one of the core difficulties that companies have.
Yeah, exactly. Like to really plan your strategies and plan your campaigns in the right way, so that you can actually focus on reading the data right. Those are things I think marketers nowadays lack a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the measurement is difficult, and that's kind of funny because in the end of the day, brand marketing has been around much longer than performance marketing. And from a technical perspective, it might be a little bit more, let's say, straightforward to track performance marketing. I mean, we all have these issues around cookies these days. GDPR came up, made things a little bit more complicated. There's a lot of browsers who prevent tracking and so on and so on. But it's still a lot more user-centric than brand marketing ever was in terms of measurement, right? So when we look at brand measurement on the other side, there's all sorts of panels and surveys and research about the effects that you also have touched upon. And I think that is the world where brand marketing has been coming from for a long while. And I think the really interesting question that we'll also try to answer to a certain degree, at least today, is how can we combine that? But speaking of all this measurement stuff, what did you do to try to really measure the effects on it? Did you try to separate campaigns? You said like the test setup, so to say, is pretty important. Or did you try to find any like sophisticated tracking solution, which I guess doesn't exist, but just wondering, what was your approach to this?
Well, there were a couple of things that we tried to have standalone brand campaigns, either in areas or in channels that we were not doing anything else. For example, when we would do brand marketing on a soccer game or something, like having the walls, the advertisement walls around, we tried to, for that time, at least, like pause our other campaigns or most of the other campaigns, and really try to focus on that game, on those 90 minutes, and see an impact on that. And we actually saw a huge impact on a couple of games where we're like, okay, that's pretty much an add-on to what we would usually get on brand traffic and conversions that would actually justify the money that we had put into that campaign. On the other side, we were seeing that over time, over months and months and months, I mean, brand marketing is nothing like, hey, okay, I'm doing brand marketing today. Tomorrow, everybody knows my brand and everybody's going to buy only on direct or whatsoever. However, we've seen that, as I said, like we came from 100% paid traffic to going towards 50% brand conversions, which for a company that was only 3-4 years old at the time, was kind of a huge achievement. And this was something that we've seen growing more and more with our content strategy, which was also like to increase the brand, to have as many touch points as possible, and to build that brand around that. Hey, we are the market platform to go to if it comes to telecommunications.
And what do you think, what's the best way to get it started? I mean, I do understand once you have reached a certain level, that all makes a lot of sense. But what do you recommend for others that are just getting started with this?
For us, it was like, first of all, really important, like get your brand straight, get your vision and your mission straight. Like your marketing should evolve around your brand and what you want to say and what you want to do. And probably you have to spend a little bit of money to actually come up with the right brand. And once you have your brand setup done, then you can think about, okay, a communication strategy that you need in order to push your brand out. In the beginning, if you don't want to spend too big bucks in all of that, social proof is always something that helps.
But was an issue for you that a lot of these brand efforts are long-term oriented, most of the time at least? That it's a long-term game, and as a startup, I remember from founding my own companies, it's more like, every month is a new month. You're trying to get better than last month and so on and so on. So was that an issue for you?
For me, not. For the investors, maybe.
That's an interesting answer for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I had a clear vision. And for me, it was a long-term goal. Like I wanted to become like the brand. Once we've been seeing the traction and the impact that we were having, I was pretty confident and I was pretty happy towards that.
Hey, we touched upon one of your companies, namely Dein Handy, a few times. Let's make it a little bit more concrete even. What was Dein Handy about?
We were a platform that you could buy your iPhone or your Samsung phone with your data plan from Telecom or from Vodafone or Telefonica, just to a lot cheaper price than you would get it with the carrier directly. However, we were in a good price range, but we were not the cheapest in the market. And what we did was, and that the brand name suggested, that the Dein Handy, which means your phone, trying to put the customer in the focus of the communication and being it all around you. And we had campaigns that would say like, hey, no matter how your character is, we're going to find the right contract for you. You need to be flexible. We have like monthly contracts for you. You need to be reachable at all times. We have the best network for you, and stuff like that. So we really try to focus things around that.
Talking about that brand, how did you really get it started? Like super concrete for all those in the audience that haven't maybe invested too much time or effort into the brand building yet. What did you do to get it really off the ground? Did you like choose an agency, an external one to help you? Or did you try to get creative in the morning and see what we'll end up with? Or how did you do it?
I pretty quickly went to a brand agency that was recommended by some friends of mine. And I talked to these guys, and then I talked to some other brand agencies, and I felt with one agency, I really felt the click. What they could do was they could paint the picture that I had in my head. They could actually transform that into something on paper, because that's something that I struggle with from time to time. I have this picture in my head and it's a great idea, I think. But it's difficult to bring that on paper or to bring that into words. And this company, this agency really did that job pretty well in executing that and bringing their scientific aspect into brand building onto that. And by this, we started to build a brand. And then from there on, we then decided on the strategy on how to roll it out and took it from there.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because when we sold our company to Dept in 2019, we got exposed to a lot more creative people, a lot more branding also, which was a complete eye-opener for me personally. I was really more on the, let's say, performance marketing-ish side before, and it's really an eye-opener.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder why. And you know what? What I think is the biggest learning for me is that when you talk about a brand, it's not just something that happens, but it's something that comes up with a plan. It's about the values that you want to stand for. It's about how you can empower people to have trust in your brand, how to connect all this together and not just doing something. I think a lot of companies are just like hammering things out, trying out whatever works, and then they see what they will end up with. And if they're unlucky, they will be stuck with a brand that they don't want to stand for. And I think this is something that you also described, which is super valuable advice for others. But at the same time, just wondering, it seems like you're a big brand advocate. You also started with performance marketing right from the start?
I did. And actually, before even before I talked to the brand guys, my very first external employee that sat on a table back then, still at my private apartment, which was used as an office in the first 6 months, was one of you guys. And I had him set up everything from scratch, from the beginning, to track every single user that we had, because it became pretty important to me. So data first, and then brand. And if you can track your brand right, and then you're set, and then nothing can go wrong. Nothing.
Yeah, this whole topic about tracking the brand, I think this is something that is worth a full episode of its own. It's actually, I would say, maybe for those interested, let's at least scratch the surface a bit. So what people are typically doing is, on the one side, they try to get all the user-centric data they can get for performance marketing, right? So every click on every ad, every click on the website, and so on and so on, so on, to build a customer journey profile of people on an individual user basis. So that means everything that a particular user does can be stitched together. So you basically end up with a full representation of whatever happened to that user. Of course, that in reality is not as easy as it may sound, but it does work to a good degree. And on the other side, on the brand side, as we said earlier, it's not really possible to have the user-centric level data, because if you are a sponsor like Robert with his company on a football game, for instance, it's hard to say that Maria Müller has watched this particular game and therefore she went to the website and bought a mobile phone in their case. But what is possible is using all the classic methodologies that people have come up with in brand marketing, such as marketing mix modeling, which is basically trying to understand the macro effects on all of this instead of the user level centric effects, and then combine both. There's a couple of different terms for that. Some call it unified marketing measurements, some call it a bit differently. But in the end, the idea is to combine both these approaches to give you a full holistic understanding of what works very well and what doesn't work very well. And in the projects that we have done in this sphere, we have seen that very often brand was, as Robert said, was totally undervalued on the one side. But at the other side, these kind of projects also were, let's say, door openers for the different departments to talk to each other, because often in reality, it's totally siloed. I would say in 80% of our clients, brand marketing and performance marketing, there's two different teams, both belong to marketing. Yeah, I get it, but that's really all about it. And I'm not saying they hate each other, but they're doing totally different things. And there's so much value lost. Is that your impression as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're getting that right now with our business, with the OnTrack business, where I'm saying like, hey, we have a great campaign idea for you guys. And then they're like, yeah, we have to refer you to brand marketing. And then we're in a big conglomerate and brand marketing doesn't know what performance marketing is doing, because they're like, yeah, they have other visuals, they have other things to do. And we're like, guys, shouldn't you be like somehow work together? So we do see that a lot, unfortunately, which kind of makes it a little more tough for us to sell our product. But still, like, it's a good way. And we have seen that we kept these guys talking, and those guys came back to us and said like, hey, so we talked together and now let's do a campaign. This is a cool idea.
Sweet. So if there's one thing that you from the audience can take away from today, I think connect these worlds, connect brand and the non-brand market world, let's say performance marketing and all the rest. Of course, there's more than just these two. Connect that together, it's for sure worth it. But now that, of course, makes me wonder, when you moved out of DeinHandy and you started your new company, OnTruck, why the hell a truck business? How did you come up with that idea?
Well, we came up with the truck business during the time of DeinHandy, actually, because we were looking for something else to build the brand, actually. And what we then came up with was, I was on the way home for Christmas or something on the Autobahn for 5 hours, 6 hours, and I saw a lot of trucks, and I was like, man, there's a lot of trucks that are completely unbranded. And we said, like, hey, it would be awesome to have our own DeinHandy trucks, actually, because that would actually add on the brand, and we could not just use that on an out-of-home scale where we would see like, oh wow, this truck of DeinHandy, probably that's full of phones. They must be a huge company if they have that many trucks. So that was the idea that we wanted to give the customer on the street, but also online. So when we said like, hey, the new iPhones are in, like we would fade out to a truck moving out of a garage and suggesting like, hey, the new phones are on the way to you guys. And people would think like, oh, wow, they have 40-ton trucks to deliver iPhones. These are the guys who have all the iPhones. Let's buy it there because they probably have some or they're getting some soon, which is marketing. It was pure marketing. I mean, the trucks are delivering potatoes or whatsoever, but still towards the end user, it's a brand campaign and it's a huge truck full of shippable goods that is on the street. And it was a completely blank canvas.
And how does it work? Is it more like a branding only topic, or are there also, let's say, some sort of transactional campaigns? Like there's this new iPhone you said, and that will be on the trucks for then, I don't know, 6 weeks, and then they turn back into the classic other campaigns or classic branding?
So the campaigns that we're doing are usually a little longer because it takes a lot of effort to actually get the canvas on the truck, and the ramp-up costs are pretty high. So our campaigns are usually like 3, 6, and 12 months or something like that. But for the 3 months campaigns, for example, most of the time the people are using a different URL. We've got one of our clients right now is Vinos.de. They're using the trucks like Vinos.de/truck. Something that is easy to recall, easy to remember.
Like back in the days with TV advertising, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much what TV advertising did as well. Something easy to recall because you're not necessarily on your phone the entire time if you're on the Autobahn or something like that.
Yeah,
however,
hope so.
For smaller trucks that are inner city where you also see a lot of foot traffic, you can also use QR codes if they're big enough to put them on a truck to see that.
Robert, how do your clients track the outcome of your campaigns, and what do they tell you?
So far, the feedback has been pretty well. Some of them did panel questionnaires before and after in the certain region. Some of them were trying to like focus on southern Germany, for example, and ask the customers on their webpage like, hey, how did you get to be aware of us? Others then again tried to use the trucks in social media to kind of push it both ways on multiple screens.
And is that something you can also give to your customers? So can I get an analytics module or something from you to understand what's working well, or do I have to do my own brand research for and afterwards?
Well, I mean, you would have to track your own data in saying like, okay, what are our conversions, but we can provide you with the data where the trucks actually went. We can kind of, close down the area where you would advertise, but then in hindsight, we can also send you the routes so you can be pretty granular on where the people saw your trucks.
Yeah, that is quite a journey from selling mobile phones to now selling advertisements on truck. Where's the business heading to? What's the next big thing at OnTruck? If you're allowed to share, of course.
Well, the next big thing, I mean, one of the big things that we did do was that we went towards CO2 neutrality or positivity indeed.
Great.
Which is that we're actually offsetting all the kilometers that are run by the 40-ton trucks with the money that we make from the campaigns. So in actually doing advertisement with us, the customer really has a positive impact because they're offsetting the traffic of the logistics in Germany and Europe by supporting climate projects of their chosen. So that is one of the things that we're already doing. And the other thing, I mean, we do upcycling. So out of the foil of the trucks, in the end, you can do some bags, some messenger bags or wet bags or something like that. And the next big thing, I think, is we're working on a bigger campaign, that we really have a campaign, like a national campaign that really makes an impact. Where you can really see like trucks on every single corner. I think that is the one thing that we're working towards. Let's see.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. No worries. I'm not going to ask you in public now which brand and so on. I'll ask you later. No. Hey, cool. Robbie, I think that is an extremely important topic for many companies because, as we said, it's not that a lot of companies are not doing brand marketing, but I think they're not maybe combining it with the rest of the marketing from no matter from which direction you want to start this equation properly. I think we've learned a lot today on what you did and what advice you have for people in the audience. Let's try to wrap it up a bit. I would say data-driven brand marketing is sort of the art and the science of measuring the effects of that your brand has towards the business outcome, as well as the interplay between, let's say, for example, performance marketing and brand marketing. You said it's important to start early. And I'm wondering now, what is the 3 takeaways that you would say, guys, that's what you should do?
Well, first of all, track all your data, because no matter where the customer comes from, I want to know and see where he comes from. Second of all, have your brand strategy straight. And with that strategy, like increase the value. And third of all, like it's all about interpreting the data in the right way, because in the end, it's a play that comes together. It's like 2 wheels that are gripping into each other. And try to analyze and really understand on a deeper level how your brand is impacting your performance channel, because most of the time, both departments not speaking to each other means that the performance marketing guy is happy that he can actually sell his performance data better because the brand marketing is actually playing a role into that. And the brand marketing guy doesn't talk to the performance marketing guy because he's happy that nobody's tracking his data and his actions. But if they would really rely on each other, there's a lot more to come out of that.
Cool. I would maybe add one single item here. If you haven't spent time on measuring your brand activities as well as combining it with the other marketing activities, then think of what I said, marketing mix modeling, multi-touch attribution, or unified marketing measurement, which are 3 things for little different purposes to get you a little bit better and up to speed in these areas. And of course, if you want to know more about it, just reach out to us and we'll hopefully be able to help out. Robert, for wrapping up today, I have a few more questions to you as a person, and I think they're pretty interesting for the audience. So I know that Dein Handy worked very well, but let's take this to another scale and say you had 100 million euros, and you don't need them for living for whatever reason because you have more. 100 million euros to invest into something, whatever it is. What would you do with 100 million?
I think I would support, with a third of that, I would probably support young startups that are seed or even pre-seed, and give founders an opportunity to get the money that they need in order to set up their companies properly. Because a lot of times what I see in startups is that people are saving on certain stuff that they shouldn't need to save on, such as having the right data tracking, having the right brand setup, for example, and that comes later, and then it costs them a lot more. So that's what I would do. With another portion, I would do probably support our Ames Foundation a little more on the wildlife in Africa, because we only have one planet and we only have so many wild animals out that are beautiful and by now unfortunately very rare. So I would try that, and I would also try to see in how to support education, especially here and the standpoint in Germany, because I think we are starting to get behind, and step by step we're losing the connection. It's much like the COVID scene where in the first episode of the pandemic, you would think like, wow, Germany is a great place to be. And we got everything under control compared to the rest of the world. And now you see like step by step, okay, we're actually lagging behind. And I think a lot of that counts for our educational system as well. So it's probably going to be a lot of invest needed there.
Okay, cool. So 33 million. Remember that question if you ever make it.
I'll do.
Hey, you touched upon education. What is something that corporates can learn from the startup world?
Dynamic, absolute dynamics, and that things don't have to be perfect all the time, and that your problem solutions are pretty much around the corner. Like my apartment was to you back in the beginning, because it's not always that complicated to try something out. It doesn't always cost 5 million to build an app or to build a website. You can just do that, get some freelancers on Fiverr or whatsoever to make some mock-ups and come up with a prototype and then go from there. So I think, dynamics and the trust in employees. I think that's a big differentiator. To have employees have power and self-control over what they're doing is something that I think big companies can learn to empower people and say like, hey, if you have an idea,
totally
go
with
for
you.
it.
Yeah. Hey, two more. First,
sure.
If you could invite anybody on the planet for dinner, dead or alive, who would it be?
It might sound cheesy, but I think it would actually be Obama. I heard him speak at Bits and Pretzels, and I saw him at some other occasion to ask him how he dealt with difficulties in his job. He can probably manage to give you a good summary on facing challenges, and I think that's a cool thing. And Elon Musk, of course, as well is a good example, because he's just a very driven person, and there's nothing that is too small or nothing that is too big for him, because he's just like pushing, going and going and going, and it doesn't matter what everybody says. He's just going. So I think those two would be having an interesting conversation that I would just like to sit there and listen into and be like, okay, guys, thank you.
Cool. That's a good one for sure. Hey, Robert, let's wrap this up with your survival skills. Imagine tomorrow, not COVID, but a zombie apocalypse would come. How useful would you be, and what would be one item that you would take away for getting prepared?
I would take as many walkie-talkies and batteries as I can get, because those are the things that can make a difference. It's communication. It's strategy and communication around strategy that will make the difference. And if zombie apocalypse comes, like, we can start to build a truck to survive from our tools in the office, actually. So we're pretty much set on that. No, but communication is key. So that's why I would say like a walkie-talkie would be a thing to take with me.
That's an interesting and creative answer. I really appreciate not saying a gun or something. So big plus on that one. Hey, Robbie, looking at the time, we're already over what we have scheduled, but I think it's a super interesting topic. I really have enjoyed talking to you today, and I hope we can continue our conversation. So I'm super grateful to have you here, and I wish you all the best luck for your on-track business, and hope we will catch up soon.
Likewise, it was a pleasure to chat with you, Christian. Have a good one.
Thanks, Robert. Then talk soon. Hey guys, if you want to connect to Robert, I think it's best to reach out on LinkedIn, because he's not only active there as a private person, but also due to his truck business. And I'm sure he will get back to you if you have a question about data-driven brand marketing or similar. I really enjoyed the conversation today. It's a story on its own that after hundreds of my data projects in the last 10 years, comparably few of them were really involving any sort of performance branding. Yet, lots of companies spend a ton of money on branding and have no idea if that's worth it or not. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and leave me a comment to discuss. If you know somebody else who would be interested in this podcast or a concrete episode, just forward it to friends and colleagues. There are many more data topics coming up, so make sure to not miss out. Have a great day, and don't forget to disrupt your data to boost the impact data analytics and AI have on your business outcome. Ciao.